Ho, ho, ho! Here we are in Philadelphia on the 27th of December. I just saw a billboard that said that the Nutcracker is going tonight and tomorrow night. I think it would be fun to see the Nutcracker in Philadelphia, but I have to work. I'm going to a New Year's Eve party though this weekend.
Be in either of the two left lanes.
I think I'll go to bed at my normal time and then get up when the party starts, and it'll be like waking up in the morning to go to a New Year's Eve party. I often have to report to work at 10:45 p.m. That's probably just when the party's going to get going. I can pretend I'm not old then, because I'm usually fairly alert for at least a few hours after I wake up. Maybe I'll be the life of the party, who knows? I've been thinking, whoa, there was a smooth maneuver. Wow. If I had been in one of the newer trucks, it would have slammed on my brakes and planted my face right on the windshield. So I'm glad I'm not in one of the newer trucks. What was I talking about? I was thinking a lot lately about the idea that I can be omnipotent in a way, or omniscient also. And it may be true. I don't know if I have access to everything easily. I don't know if it's stored up in the cloud, which is what I think. I suspect that it's, available to everybody. I have a feeling that with that information, it would feel like Dorothy's ruby slippers. We would just click our heels together and go home. And realize at that moment that we've had the power to go home for a long time, wherever home is. There's this image in my head of me being 6 feet 10 inches and eternally young. And I think there are a couple places in literature that refer to like Übermensch. Here's a great example. Harrison Bergeron, satirical dystopian science fiction short story by American writer Kurt Vonnegut, first published in October 1961. In the year 2081, which is probably right around the corner, the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to the Constitution dictate that all Americans are fully equal and not allowed to be smarter, better looking, or more physically able than anyone else. The handicapper generals agents enforce the equality laws, forcing citizens to wear handicaps, masks for those who are too beautiful, loud radios that disrupt thoughts inside the ears of intelligent people. That's what music does to me. It's always like a loud radio in my head, and it does disrupt my thoughts. And heavy weights for the strong or athletic. One April, 14-year-old Harrison Bergeron, an intelligent, athletic, and good-looking teenager, is taken away from his parents, George and Hazel Bergeron, by the government. They are barely aware of the tragedy, as Hazel has average intelligence, contextually meaning stupidity, and George has a handicap radio installed by the government to regulate his above-average intelligence. Hazel and George watch ballet on television. They comment on the dancers who are weighed down to counteract their gracefulness and masked to hide their attractiveness. George's thoughts are continually interrupted by the different noises emitted by his handicap radio, which piques Hazel's curiosity and imagination regarding handicaps. Noticing his exhaustion, Hazel urges George to lie down and rest his handicap bag, 47 pounds of weights locked around George's neck. She suggests taking a few of the weights out of the bag, but George resists, aware of the illegality of such action. And I've read this story before. In the end, it has a very sad ending. because their teenage phenomenon he gets murdered with a 10-gauge double-barreled shotgun. Diana Moon Glampers, the handicapper general, comes into their living space and blows the kid away. She threatens the musicians at gunpoint to put on their handicaps again because it turns out their son was on television. On television, they're watching ballet, and then a news reporter struggles to read the bulletin and hands it to the ballerina wearing the most grotesque mask and heaviest weights. She begins reading in her unacceptably natural, beautiful voice, then apologizes before switching to a more unpleasant voice. Harrison's escape from prison is announced, their son Harrison, and a full-body photograph of Harrison is shown, indicating that he is 7 feet tall and burdened by 300 pounds of handicaps. George recognizes his son for a moment before having the thought eliminated by his radio. This just seems so real. Harrison himself then storms the television studio in an attempt to overthrow the government. He calls himself the Emperor and rips off all of his handicaps, along with the handicaps of a ballerina whom he proclaims his Empress. He orders the musicians to play, promising them nobility if they do their best. So even the music can't be beautiful. And it's funny because the parents, after their son is blown away with a 10-gauge shotgun, go back to their lives, not being able to remember having seen their son get murdered.
Super people, supermen, and it's interesting when you're in that frame, when you have that image in the imagery, the picture of what you would be if bullets couldn't hurt you, or if the government couldn't come knocking on your door and tell you to shut up or kill you. If we lived in an era like we do now, but even one person was bulletproof, one person was untouchable, that one person, especially if you live forever, you can start spreading the news about the truth that we're not hearing, that we're not receiving. And I know I've thought so much about the system, but here it's a combination, because if one individual is immune and can operate in complete freedom and say anything he or she wants, and I know none of you are deluding yourselves into thinking that we live in a society that's like that. Ask people who have been banned from Twitter, people like me. So if that started to happen, I think people would find a way to you, especially if you were immune from censorship, especially if you could post on any platform you wanted and nobody could touch it. Hopefully all of them.
In 1 3/4 miles, take exit 339 on the left to US 1 South.
I never do that trick. It's a little tiny shortcut. She tells me to cut through on US 1. It works, but there's no reason to do it, especially since the traffic is light right after Christmas. So you get into this mode of thinking when you imagine that you're untouchable, that nobody can censor you and that nobody can harm you, and then you realize what you can do. And once you realize what you could do in that mode, then you start to have conversations with yourself, at least I do. Well, why not just operate that way anyway? I've noticed with wealth, you just start to expect things and act as though you already have it, and pretty soon you do have it. And that's true with me anyway, with the absence of fear. I start to expect that nothing is going to make me afraid. I already have that ability, and and therefore I already have that ability. It's like that trick that breaks the vicious circle. And so if I'm acting as though I can operate in this world with impunity, I can. I will be immune. I will be bulletproof.
Take exit 339 on the left to US 1 South.
There's something good not to run into. He's clear out into this side lane. That is scary. But maybe he's immune. I was going to say, also immune to diseases like pandemic diseases. So then you just go along, not getting sick, not even getting older, and you just operate in that perfect place, and then you don't have any reason to pull your horns in, ever. You're just always in that place, in that perfect place. I suspect is that if even one person started to operate that way, it would spread. Especially if you could depict it in social media. You could show what it would be like. And you could show that you're immune. And if people believed it, they would start to operate that way too. Because fear is what holds us back individually, and fear is what holds us back collectively. So that ability to communicate what it would look like, what it would feel like to live that way, I think would do something big picture. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna act as though I'm going to expect that I'm bulletproof. And I'm just gonna operate that way. And if I do start to age in reverse, and if I do become 6'9", maybe the Sixers will need somebody to play for them. I think I would also need to develop a more natural ability to play basketball. But why not? Why not just expect all that to happen? I'd have a great time. And if I never aged, I would never have to retire. If I never got injured, if the other team's fans couldn't assassinate me, that'd be pretty awesome. I don't know why I said the Sixers. It's probably just because I'm right here at this moment. I grew up rooting for the Portland Trailblazers because I grew up in Portland, Oregon. But truthfully, I don't really care if any teams win or lose. But I really like the sport of basketball. So maybe I could just take turns playing for all the teams. Take turns living in all the places. That'd be good. If I wanted to get back into music, I could take turns playing my instruments or singing or conducting in different places. Just go along, a few decades in each place. Meanwhile, everyone would learn to live without fear. And we would operate very efficiently after a while. And I think we would become more tolerant of each other and more tolerable. I think we would become easier to get along with, and we would find ourselves less offended by other people. I think both are obviously necessary in these times. Oh, and I hope you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy Krampus, Kwanzaa, Saturnalia, Ramadan. I don't know if Ramadan was where that was this year. Hanukkah, of course. Anything you celebrate. Beer. Whatever it is, I hope you've been having a splendid time. I was just listening to Nat King Cole sing "Oh Holy Night," and it dawned on me that what I've been talking about is when the soul feels its worth. A thrill of hope. It's when you feel who you really are. And we don't see that very often. We don't catch glimpses very often of the truth about ourselves. And if we all did, if we all saw our soul's true worth, there wouldn't be any containing us. The cat would be out of the bag. That would be it. And I think that is what's supposed to happen. I think that's what the prophecies most often are about. Not just producing obedient workers and obedient breeders, because that's what a lot of Christmas songs are about, is romance, and that it isn't worth anything unless you're with someone else, and all of that breeding stuff, so that we'll keep producing more obedient workers. And there's an agenda for sure in school and religion and all that, but under that, well, and then the school's use and religion's use of the holidays of Christmas, particularly, to get more and more obedient workers popped out. But beneath all that is a message of hope and true freedom, liberation.
In 1/2 mile, turn right on River Road.
And so that's what I want my Christmas message to myself to be, is liberation. Living as though there isn't anybody watching. Living as though there are no rules that are going to limit me, and no enforcement if there are. And that would make an entirely different way of living. And ultimately, I think it would change the entirety of creation. Right now, ultimately, the world is about spreading shit. Propaganda. Like that tractor's doing. Why don't you come out? Oh, you got his... He hadn't hit the button yet, but when it does, huge swath of
In
shit comes
3/4
out
of a
the
mile,
back.
arrive at home, on the right.
And if that isn't what our media and all the other messaging too, institutions of messaging include schools and churches, but all of that propaganda comes spewing out. If we're ever going to achieve the liberation that Christmas promises, we're going to have to figure out how to avoid all of the propaganda. But even if one person does it,